Welcome back, everyone. Today we have an amazing show and a masterclass in AI. We have on the show Demetris Skourides, Chief Scientist and the Chairman of AI Task Force of Cyprus. And we're going to cover all the topics you can imagine about AI. What does AI bring to the private sector? What does it bring to the public sector? How does the public sector see the AI as an enabler of value, capturing the value, generating the value? What does it mean for the everyday person? And what does the public sector and the governmental bodies do so the companies, the individuals can get the best out of AI and capture all the value? Now, we also touched upon crypto. We cannot go without crypto because we are big fans of crypto. And Demetris also explained his position and the position of government. What do they bring crypto companies to Cyprus? And what does he see for the future? Enjoy the show, have a blast, subscribe to the channel. My name is Anton Golub. I'm the co-host of Blogcast Show, and I'm here together with my co-host, Demetrios Zamboglou. You will have a blast, enjoy the show, and have a blast.
And on an average, a data center to run today needs about 1.4 million gallons of water. That's enough to, give water to about 15,000 people. So when you actually start creating an AI-enabled community where everybody uses AI, the numbers will explode. And you can imagine that when you have 480 data centers, that's enough, water for 15 million people. So for example, I log in and I'm using my Citizen mobile app, for example, and I know that my passport is expiring and my visa for Japan or for USA is actually expiring, and I don't have to go and start doing the process. I just click on a button and it starts automating the entire task for me. So it's important for us to really understand that the opportunity is to create a better work-life balance. So you can use AI, right, or generative AI in a way that it can make life much easier for you to really do a better quality job at a faster time so that you can balance this. But to get there, you need to make that additional time investment or put in the time.
I think a simple answer for this, Anton, is that when they did AI, they got the UI right. When they did blockchain, they got the AI, UI and UX very, very wrong. It's still very difficult to send an amount of any crypto funds related to someone. You're always scared you will copy paste the wrong address.
Yes.
You're always scared maybe you missed one of the lines. But when they did this AI, UI, UX experience, they did everything correct.
But even then, to get there, you need to understand that the basic infrastructure for you to leverage and get benefit out of artificial intelligence is to understand that it's not the use case, it's the data, it's the data scientists that can really process and make the quality of the information.
So Demetris, welcome to the show. Really a pleasure to have you. A pleasure to have a scientist as well on the show.
I think our first scientist.
First scientist, so really
True
strong.
scientist.
And really great to have you. And I think this is also a bit of a Cypriot connection,
Yep.
Demetrios. So I think great to have you on the show. I think it's going to be amazing, yeah?
Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah. So Demetrios, I understand that you had yesterday a very strong event,
Yes.
some very strong collaboration here happening with Cyprus and with the region, with UAE. Maybe to open up the discussion, I think you were present there as well.
I was just, the guy behind the curtain.
Okay.
So I wasn't very active. I was proud to be invited, of course, and proud to meet new people, fascinating people, and also proud to be a small little link between my country and this country over here that I'm excited to be part of.
Yeah.
And maybe Demetrios can tell us a little bit about what happened actually yesterday.
Well, yesterday was the commencement, or let's say a signing ceremony where a Cypriot company that focuses on really changing the game, bringing entrepreneurs, innovators, startups together to really start changing the scene in the country by adopting technology. What we saw yesterday was a formal, let's say, launch by Reflect and Doers that are coming to the UAE, and there is a strategic decision, a major investment between Dubai Silicon Oasis to actually host this event in coming November. This is actually a very important opportunity, because what happens is usually when you go to technology events, you end up seeing, companies who just want to sell their products. You see some startups which are in the beginning and they're looking for an investor. but you don't see a pot where you're having the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the people who are basically creating that community to really move together. And this bridge between the UAE and Cyprus is of paramount importance because of two reasons, right? The UAE is becoming rapidly one of the world's, let's say, startup hubs. Yep. It is actually investing a lot and will become one of the leading areas in artificial intelligence. Actually, even now when we look at the reports, it's like within the top 10. But what is important is that as each region looks at innovation, regulation, and also safeguarding the benefit of the companies and the citizens, they have different methodologies. So for the UAE startups that actually want to branch into Europe, the gateway of Cyprus into the European Union, and actually for the Cypriot entrepreneurs or startups that want to branch into GCC and to the rest of the region, that's important. But the most important one is that when you actually can create a balanced ecosystem where you have a headquarter and a subsidiary or an R&D office that can reside in the region, you actually can create synergy because you unlock two fast-moving regions, the one of the GCC with Europe, which is 19 trillion euros right now, and that creates an immense opportunity.
Awesome. Demetris, in the preparation for the podcast, you told us you have quite a long history with the region, with the UAE. I think it would be great for the audience to hear that, and maybe also a little bit that we get in a little bit about your background as well, that we put all those pieces together. If you can share, how did that start? Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, I started my journey here in the UAE when I was 4 days old, and it actually came in the late 70s. So growing up here, it was an amazing experience because you really saw that the local community was always all about making you smile. Everybody greeted, everybody was there to facilitate. And coming back, I came back first time after leaving. I left about 88, and the next time that I came back was 2006. And what I had seen is that the city had grown so big, there were many new items that were here. 10 years later, after coming on various occasions with business, I moved early in 2017 with my role at Oracle then, which later facilitated in me, serving EMEA and Asia Pacific as the cloud transformation lead for the ecosystem. And what was very important that I took away there, and I actually saw in reality the importance of that vision, is that Dubai envisioned before everybody the concept of the super hub. So if you really want to really have a business that scales across the region, right, and being based here, you have this unlimited connection. I remember my trips to Sydney, and then to South Korea, and then to Singapore, and then all the way back to the United States was very seamless using the connection they have here. The second item that was actually important is that there is a vision, and that vision basically drives the entire agenda of how everything is built. And it's like you see all of the pieces of the puzzle coming through. But the most important part is that you see this dedication to build it, be it, for example, the journey that started early on with blockchain, that they had the ambition to really save almost 5 billion, let's say, AED per year from the public sector, and they streamlined it. So later on, for example, starting the first wild in the world, having a first AI minister, which was Minister His Excellency.
This was a question that I was going to ask you. Do you see even countries like Cyprus in the near future having a minister of AI?
Well, Cyprus could in the future have a minister of AI. The thing, though, that is very important is that you cannot start one day and move to the next day by creating such a dedicated infrastructure, because there is a lot of work that needs to happen before. So let me give you an example without really talking about too much in the detail. Dubai started realizing that the importance of data was paramount, and they started by building and investing in institutionalizing, let's say, the role of the chief data officer, the chief innovation officers. And when you start building the foundation, at some point of time where you're ready, you can actually go to the next level, which is, let's say, a chief AI officer. But even then, to get there, you need to understand that the basic infrastructure for you to leverage and get benefit out of artificial intelligence is to understand that it's not the use case, it's the data, it's the data scientists that can really process and make the quality of the information. You then move above and you understand, what is the infrastructure that I need to have, to be able to have the language models. And then the use cases can align in industry. And this is the beautiful part here. So back to your question, in Cyprus, we're moving on a very fast trajectory. We're moving from the time where we had, a lot of legacy applications that we've built. And as we're moving now with the new digital agenda that His Excellency Minister Nikodimos Damianou is driving, we have a plan, we're modernizing, we're going to move to the cloud-first policy, and that is then going to accelerate very, very fast our readiness to be able to harness all of these technologies.
Demetris, you mentioned a very important role of data in the future. And we saw, for instance, here in the UAE, but also in the region, preparing for that by building infrastructure or collaborating with the biggest companies in the world like NVIDIA, OpenAI, to facilitate Microsoft
Amazon,
as well, yeah.
To mention some big ones.
So really, how do you see this as a strategic agenda for the countries in the future?
Yes. So let me actually separate the two together. Yeah. So there are, for a company to be able, or for a nation to be able to build for scale, it does not make sense to start building technology from zero to get to the level where the hyperscalers are today. The hyperscalers have, if you combine them, millions of years or thousands of years of experience in putting all of this technology and making it scale at marginal cost. Yeah. So we cannot beat these, right, even if we had to build them for ourselves. But they do bring some advantages that we need to understand. So its scalability, resilience, and the cost effectiveness is important. Now, when you are looking into an agenda of adopting artificial intelligence at a national level, you need to be able to understand that there are applications or use cases that will always be mission critical, that are important depending on the legislation, the culture, and the mindset of a specific nation. And there are others that are less critical. And for those, you will have to balance what I call sovereign infrastructure or sovereign AI capability versus the capability that we would want to have for hyperscale. So if yes, we would like to deploy, for example, artificial intelligence for tourism, for the entire, let's say, tourism population. If you have a country that has a population of 10 million and has 20 million tourists a year, it is obviously better for you to find a way that you will use the hyperscaler. Likewise, if you want to have, for example, complete control, like military defense, like police and justice, then you need a different strategy that will actually benefit the result, the use case you're using.
Okay.
And do you see adoption also, since we're talking about AI, from the people that work in the government? Do you see enthusiasm that they want to do another degree, they want to learn? Are you using a third-party provider that they need to do this kind of new courses? So are we preparing our future leaders for this transformation?
That's actually a very good question, and thank you for asking it. So yes, what we see is that there are a lot of people in Cyprus that are really stepping up to start getting that education on AI. Specifically, we have a specific department or an entity, an authority called the Human Resource Development Authority of Cyprus, HRDA. HRDA has already put inside its own curriculum, let's say the cloud, for example, trainings, or the AI trainings, for example, on Azure or the other technologies. And these are the more technical trainings that move up. However, what we're seeing is a lot of requests for people to understand how to skill up on no code development for artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, what we are doing, and as part of the task force that I'm leading, I'm also the chairman of the National AI Task Force. What we are predicting is that the technology behind AI, or what we call today Gen AI, is going to change and become so much more powerful that the actual availability and capability of the tools are going to be accelerating very, very fast. So what we consider today a product that gives you XYZ will actually be very, very different in the next 5 years. So what we are looking at right now at our committee level internally through a specific working group is what are the fundamental skills that we need to have at the educational level for the educator, for the younger generations, for the students who are going to become, the next generation researchers, scientists, developers, managers, leaders, and eventually, right, professionals and the third age. And let me just give you an example. The first person that actually in my family right now is the most active user of artificial intelligence is my mother. And it
Oh,
all
wow.
started,
I was
right?
thinking is your son or
Oh, yes.
And it first started, and he said to me, Demetris, I hear about this thing, I read about it, but what can I do? I said to her, have you ever cooked, for example, a Vietnamese meal or a dish? She said, no, I don't know the recipes. I said, what if I told you that it's so easy to find? And we had a session. And
Wow.
then I was surprised because a week later I walked in and we have some personnel that help us at home. And my mom was actually talking to one of our personnel, which is actually from Nepal.
Mm.
And I said to her, but how did you do this? It's very simple. It's just translate. So imagine that now somebody who's 75 years old can really use it as a human translator, as a communication mechanism, as summarize it for me, as help me understand this in a very simple way. And these are generating a lot of value. And to end, I think the most important thing that we need to start educating the industry, the society, and our fellow citizens is that AI is a fundamental opportunity for us to create more value, to capture more value, and to understand how it can unlock value for us.
To actually then continue in that direction, we have this provocative question usually that we ask to our guests, which are usually more on the crypto side. And the question is...
We'll touch upon the crypto side.
In the crypto side.
Don't worry about
But
this.
we usually ask the question, how much of in your daily life you use AI, and compared how much in your daily life crypto is used. And kind of usually what the feedback that we gotten from our guests is actually that the crypto adoption has been much behind AI adoption, actually. How do you see this? Do you have the same experience as a scientist or as a person who is looking for the future of the country? How do you see this comparison or this balance? Yeah.
Thank you for asking. I think this is an important question, and I'd like to elaborate more. So today, it is evident that we see a lot more adoption of artificial intelligence than you see in crypto, on the crypto side, and there is a reason for it, right? There is this very interesting tool that we call the Gartner hype curve. So when a technology comes, right, depending on the use case and the promise and how big that can actually move, it moves up, it goes into a slope, then it falls, and then when it's mature enough, it goes up the slope. So what's happening right now is that AI is much more ahead, not because it's a better technology, right, or it's a proven technology. It's something, though, that gives a promise that unlocks at the same time multiple value propositions. So let me elaborate on what I say, right? So when people say, how is AI going to change my business? AI is going to change your business in a very simple way by really helping you, for example, offer a much more enriched customer experience at a much faster rate at a lower productivity. So we look at the example of fintechs, right, or wealth tech type of solutions. At some point of time, we used to see, for example, private banking or wealth managers sitting at the top, looking at top, customers, and they were experts in this, but they dealt with a number of, let's say, accounts. What happened is, as the computing power and the processing power came, right, it made it easier for us or companies to serve millions of more users. But what happened with artificial intelligence, because of this very fast adaptation to identify patterns of how to understand things, right, and learn, bringing this intelligence inside, a wealth management approach and training it on models allowed, for example, a bank or a wealth management application to go from serving top tier banks to be able to have an offering for medium net worth individuals. And boom, right? When the computing power is very, very fast, you can scale this out to millions of users. But again, because this had an immediate tangible benefit for the company that was actually developing the solution to captivate the market, move very fast, right? Capture on a much easier cost. At the same time, they started looking into the second aspect, which was productivity. And when you start looking at the promise of artificial intelligence and productivity, you then unlock another powerful combination. So I think for these reasons, the cycle actually enabled us or enabled the industry to move much faster to prove the value proposition. Not saying that blockchain and the other technologies on the cryptocurrencies are not there, but what I wanted to say is that we will actually be seeing in the upcoming years a surge on the other side very soon, and that is all happening because of the inflection of all of these technologies that are really going to be accelerating, I think, industry disruption at much faster cycles.
Understand.
I think a simple answer for this, Anton, is that when they did AI, they got the UI right. When they did blockchain, they got the AI, UI and UX very, very wrong. It's still very difficult to send an amount of any crypto funds related to someone. You're always scared you will copy paste the wrong address.
Yes.
You're always scared maybe you missed one of the lines. But when they did this AI, UI, UX experience, they did everything correct.
A chat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So remember how many people lost their wallet.
Oof.
And they
Still losing.
Oof.
and they
Losing them.
and they cannot find it, right?
Yes.
And so it's the same thing. But Messenger, right? Imagine ChatGPT is like Messenger.
Yes.
You just ask a question, you get an answer.
Yes.
So I think these, thank you, Dimitri. You just brought up a very, very important point. Is the simplicity of the user experience and the reduction of fear, or basically the reducing that fear factor, is something that drove the technology. However, as we're seeing, as I said earlier on, the amount of technology and the power that we're seeing right now coming up is really going to accelerate. I think the industry is very fast.
Demetris, I really liked how you actually focused the argumentation about value, right? What is it that we value, that we get, bring, capture, unlock through technology? But there are many concerns in the world, actually, that unlocking that value, capturing that value, might lead to job losses on the other side,
Yes.
right? Because we are becoming more efficient, more productive, faster. How do you see this dilemma? Paradigm, yeah.
Well, I think I love the word paradigm and the dilemma, because sometimes when you think of the dilemma, there is no easy answer one way or another. But let me try answering this in a simple way. Anything you do will always have consequences. However, I think when a government or an industry looks at developing policies to address the negative side effects, they need to take into consideration today, the current, the past, and the future. So when we look at, for example, preparing the workforce for what is to come, today we don't really understand to a great extent how some of these models are really learning some of these techniques and some of the answers they're having. So they have some sophisticated capability that we also need to understand how some of these causal interfaces or references are having. So it's important for us to really understand that the opportunity is to create a better work-life balance. So you can use AI, right, or generative AI in a way that it can make life much easier for you to really do a better quality job at a faster time, so that you can balance this. But to get there, you need to make that additional time investment, or put in the time to be able to understand how to do prompting, or how to really start leveraging the maximum capability you have. At the same time, we also need to look at the opportunity, which is not just the work-life balance, which is also how much more useful or how much more attractive a person will actually become when he actually starts mastering these skills. So what we have seen, and I think these comes from, studies, be it PricewaterhouseCoopers or McKinsey's around the world, and Accenture's, which are basically saying that people who know how to use AI tools may actually have an increased pay raise of about 30%.
Which is very significant.
Which is very significant. Now, right, on the other side, on the negative side, right, we also see that there is a problem that a very popular, let's say, author that wrote in his book called Irreplaceable, where he explained the negative effects of AI obesity, right? So what he's saying there in very simple terms is, we humans are unique because we are creative, we are better at decision making, using insight, right, and creative problem solving. But the way we use today, and many people use today, artificial intelligence or AGI tools, is to do very simple things. And what that's happening is that it's making our capability to do the average quality of work much lower than what an AGI interface will do. And that is a risk that we need to protect ourselves and make sure. So what we are doing is we at the level of the Cypriot government at the task force level, we are really looking at the different types of personas of users, right? And to think as to the level of education that we need to not future-proof them for adopting a ChatGPT or a Copilot or a Gemini tomorrow, but for them to be ready for the next 5 years. And this is part of something that we call evolutionary learning. So personally, I'm very eager to share this with you. I've developed a pilot. We call it the digital advisor of the chief. So when I want to actually ask a member of my team who's a scientist to do a comparison of the AI policy of France, of Finland, of the UAE, of Singapore and Cyprus, and to give me a suggestion, because this person won't actually know how to do prompting, or this person doesn't know how to actually use AI, we've made the user interface so simple. He just opens and he says, I want to do comparison on policy. I want to compare strategy. I want to compare XYZ country. And then he writes in his prompt saying, I want to understand how these strategies compare at the digital skill level. And the answer that he gets, because we've built it, using transparency principles, showcases that he saved 19 hours in something that gave him back a reply in 1 minute. Wow. So you can understand that this person right now is starting slowly to use it. And by having, regular coffee sessions with the team where you show them, hey guys, this is what you can do better, etc. All of them are becoming better scientists, better professionals, and they're loving it.
I like how you really emphasize the need to move away from repetitive tasks that can be easily automated through AI and more go towards creativity. And many times when I'm trying to educate myself as well how to use, I use AI, but I'm also educating in how further to enhance my usage of AI. Many times I hear this as advices to consider AI as your advisor, right? As somebody who with whom you bounce ideas, not necessarily just process automated tasks. I think this is also something, Demetrios, we discussed as well, is how to always the best leverage AI. Yeah?
Yes, I'm also thinking about an example that I talked to someone yesterday who had also a PhD like me, and I was trying to explain him, even nowadays, to do research is hard because most likely you will plagiarize. And even if you do not want to plagiarize, it's extremely hard. So what we will see in the next couple of years is AI pushing researchers to do even more. So this notion of original ideas will happen in the next couple of years. And this will be like an awakening for the new scientists and the new researchers.
You're actually absolutely spot on. So I think what Demetris just shared is the opportunity for us as the human to raise our bar up and not just, take something that was copied from another book and just say that it's the same paraphrase. And going back to your question, all you need to ask when you write something, right, is saying, can you tell me if the poem that I just wrote for my wife has been copied from somewhere, or is it original? Right? And then it's going to tell you, well, you know what, this came from XYZ, right? So then you start saying, well, maybe I need to do something more special. And that is exactly what the power of this tool is. It can really help us push our boundaries and explore, think in ways that we haven't mapped before. So
wanted to also ask you in context of giving out output by the AI. Many times people have questioned if there's a bias within the AI that can either result from the model or from the trading data, but in order to enhance that creativity, enhance our productivity, we need an unbiased AI somehow as well, right? Who doesn't have preconceived ideas, or who is maybe not giving us answers that would not challenge us, right? And this is also a big topic on the governmental level as well, many times what I have noticed, yeah?
Yes. So what I would like to say is that when we look at AI and when we look at essentially the decisions, or let's say the outputs or the recommendations coming, they're coming because the model was trained on a specific training data, and then it got fine-tuned and built up. So if inherently there is the bias in the model, right, or in the data, that will be copied. And the chances is that the model is somehow biased or the data is biased. This is why the golden answer is always, before you start using artificial intelligence, especially at the company level, make sure that you have the processes, the systems, the infrastructures, the teams that will look at the data first and make sure that that data has a specific quality. Because it's very simple. You can take an article, right, that doesn't have the name of the author. You can say article written by Demetris, right? You take a picture, you uploaded it, and all of a sudden, right, the tool will start saying that this article has been written by Demetris. You click on it and you say, save this as memory, right? And then it will remember it as memory. And nobody will question it. So it's important that, especially at the industry level, at the government level, where decisions define policies or data influence policies, that we have this paradigm of data quality, data cleansing, and make sure that we then train the models. However, on the AGI model, I mean, when I'm talking about generative AI, because Microsoft, because Google, because OpenAI have done all of this extensive testing, the amount of information that you can really bias the model with is negligible, right? And that's where the care is. However, concluding for you here, this is what we also need to understand, that when we talk about governments or we talk about businesses, before you start talking about what use case you're going to be putting into your organization or your government, you need to start defining a strategy. What do I want to do with AI? Where do I want to use AI? And as I'm thinking about that, where do I put the human in the loop to make sure that if I find the machine, bringing in data or that is biased or taking decisions autonomous that are incorrect, etc., how can I rectify it? And that will bring me, I think, to one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which is we hear about agentic AI and the difference between the other tools, and I think that's very important, because up until now we thought about AI as a tool of, I ask it a question, it gives me a responsive answer, right? Yes. But we're not even using more than 3% of the power of this technology. And agentic AI, which actually can give you this way of think, of analyze, of design, respond, and adjust at the same time, it creates productivity benefit that's much bigger. So this is now we have to think about a completely different system.
So maybe if we go a little bit back and talk about this AI working group, can you give us like a couple of milestones you want to achieve in the next 5 years, let's say, or 10 years? What would be a big milestone for you guys to achieve? I will give you an example. Maybe every student will use AI in his curriculum. Maybe some of the things in the government, like one of the department will be fully automated. So do you have some kind of milestones that you want to achieve, that they're set up in this vision you're pursuing?
Yes. So let me start basically from the basics of our AI task force. So our task force was built radically different from some task forces we see in other countries. What is different in this specific task force is that we took into consideration that, given that the technology is new, we need people who understand it from the research perspective and the scientific perspective. At the same time, we also wanted to understand, right, how does the industry view the technology and what's happening in the industry, because public adoption and also private adoption, right, they go hand in hand, and usually the private sector is faster. So if the government creates a policy or a strategy that does not encourage or does not empower the private sector to move fast, you create a deadlock in terms of speed. And the third one is also put together not just futurists, people who see how AI will change our lives in 10 years time, but also the legal aspect of it, because there are many things that we need to start thinking about, right? And I'll give you an example. We have computer vision in cars, and they do this lane assist driving. But with AI and self-driving or self-driving cars, at some point in the future, we'll be having a car that will be taking our kids to the school, and it will have a direction saying, do anything to protect the child. So when an accident happens, the car will take a protective, let's say, move to protect the child. But at the other side, you might have outside an older person crossing the road, an older person waiting somewhere, or another child, right? And then how do you differentiate the importance between one child versus another, or one human being versus a child? These things are things that we don't have answers right now, because we have not been able to really use these technologies in more complex scenarios. And I'll stand here for a second and say that we have used AI in what we call narrow AI, meaning very specialized tasks, like AI for customer service on a website, right? Or AI, for example, to find fraud, or AI to do that. So what we are doing at the task force is we have 5 predominant areas that are working, let's say.
It's exactly what I think our audience wants to hear.
Working communities, right? One of them is about understanding what is the research direction where we want to focus when it comes to AI in the next 5 years for us to accelerate. Number 2 is basically what are the industries where we see AI having a very short term or a very near term impact for us, because we need to move fast in some areas, right, where we know how to use the technology, or where we see that there is a big move. Number 3 is to actually look at the workplace and the workforce of the future. And it's not just about teaching public servants how to use AI. It's not about it's also about caring about the elders. How will the older people be able to use this technology? How will the kids be able to learn faster, but at the same time learn values? Because sometimes, right, you can ignore that. Moving onwards, right, how do you actually decide what type of infrastructure do you need? So this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, because let's look at, Southeastern Europe. An average number of data centers in Southeastern Europe is about 480. And on an average, a data center to run today needs about 1.4 million gallons of water. That's enough to, give water to about 15,000 people. So when you actually start creating an AI-enabled community where everybody uses AI, the numbers will explode. And you can imagine that when you have 480 data centers, that's enough, water for 15 million people. So what are the types of infrastructures that we need to build to help us slowly start adjusting this technology and using it, but at the same time, not losing the benefit it will give? And this requires a lot of trade-off analysis. Example, right? Google and Microsoft have models that are trained in medical technologies, right? That they can diagnose most diseases with 98.4% accuracy. So do we want to think about, a glass of water versus saving a person from cancer or saving a person from a heart attack? So these are ethical dilemmas that we also need to consider. And the 5th one is basically ethics and IP, where we need to understand and see how do we change, what do we consider to make sure that our models have built-in transparency, let's say traceability of the model, reduction of bias, as we said before, and AI responsible use. And in doing that, you go back and you say, do I want to enable my military defense systems to all use autonomous AI or not? What's the dangers?
I think the answer is no.
No, exactly.
I was about to ask you, this apocalyptic scenario is always mentioned when the AI takes over, usually the military aspect of a sovereign, right? And then we have challenges. So you would say that the answer would be no there. Yep. A hard no or a no with control, or how do you see that? Yeah?
No, for the military, personally, my personal opinion, and I think that I've also seen this in various discussions I have with experts across the world, it's a no, meaning that you build it and you actually have no-go scenarios where we contain the models. There are safety models within that can shut down the models or protect from taking over. However, what I wanted to say, answering back to the question of what I would see as milestones in the future, is the first milestone is very simple, is to make sure that we introduce AI without causing humans harm. And without causing humans harm means without leading to a point where they will be laid off, or people like us will actually be losing their jobs because we cannot adjust enough. So creating a policy and creating, let's say, the mechanisms by which you will skill people and offer those incentives for them to be able to really leverage the benefits, and at the same time not give an opportunity to, I think, companies or industries to be able to move that fast in making the easy choice of, cost versus human. That's important. The second part is that developing the safety in the model in a way that you don't compromise speed over safety. And many times we have seen this with software architecture and developments where we have actually failed to prioritize on quality, on safety, and we have actually rolled out the deliverable. The third item is to, first of all, eventually by 2028, if we can make it, and that's an ambition that both myself and the Deputy Minister of Research, Policy and Innovation have, is to move Cyprus into an area where we will also have a mobile first and an AI first policy. So right now, we're still moving towards a cloud first, but if we get to that point, it means that when we decide as government to introduce a new solution, we will say, is this solution able to scale with AI to help us give a better customer service? And to stand here, right, it is to our advantage as a government and also as citizens to design systems that use artificial intelligence technologies to offer better customer service. So to answer your question, I truly believe that by 2030, we should be able to be at a point where we will have personalized journeys that are really helping us navigate through our life and our interaction with the government. So for example, I log in and I'm using my Citizen mobile app, for example, and I know that my passport is expiring and my visa for Japan or for USA is actually expiring, and I don't have to go and start doing the process. I just click on a button and it starts automating the entire task for me, right? So, or for example, where you basically say, I had an appointment, I can't make it. I would really appreciate if somebody can connect with me for me to really, provide that input, and combine something that I saw here in the UAE and I loved a lot, which is a smart police station, where you can walk in at the convenience of your time. You can use your identity, and all of a sudden it's as if you actually walked to a police station. You went through all of the, the control, and you're talking to an officer, but it happens at the safety of your, let's say, in the comfort of your living room. So by 2030, I believe that if we are going to be able to have one or two of the ministries have these digitized experiences and customer learning journeys that will provide customers with and the citizens with a seamless journey, I think that is going to be a first step, and I think that's also going to be, I think, a very good model.
The other thing I want to ask you is, like, are you involved in some other task forces? And maybe you want to share something about that. I know you have a passion for startups, but we will talk about this later. But apart from AI, which I'm also super fascinated about, what other kind of task forces or communities there in the government that you're involved in?
Well, there's many things that we are doing at the government level that I can't talk about, right? Because
we
of
don't want you to talk about
no.
secret.
But I'll give you.
Maybe there is a fintech panel. Maybe there is a science panel. I don't know. Science task force.
So I wouldn't call them as task forces, but what I would call them is as interest communities and groups that are basically building the thought leadership for the future. I work very closely with a group of doctors who are very preoccupied as to how can technologies like this help us improve the healthcare system rapidly. That's one, right? And I'm very passionate about that. And what I have particularly noted is that, and I'm very, very happy, is that our startup community, which is growing very fast, by the way, is actually now putting a lot of emphasis on healthcare and health tech. So I'll give an example. We have a very interesting platform that was created by the German Oncology Center with some of the partners in a project called Agora 3.0, which essentially brings together a series of, let's say, technologies and knowledge to be able to do predictive assessment for prostate cancer. And this could actually be a first wave where we try and we start learning how we can actually predict and prevent all sorts of let's say areas. We are also seeing another type of a startup which is taking, for example, impact on health from a very different perspective. There is another startup in Cyprus called Brain Sozo, which they are using neuromodulation to be able to really start influencing and seeing if they can reduce the impact of let's say Alzheimer's or muscle sclerosis, etc. And what's fascinating for me is while working with these doctors, I start understanding that many of them have not even realized how much artificial intelligence can come and play. So these discussions are forcing us to really bring together doctors with, let's say, AI engineers and scientists to talk about how can we really create these multidisciplinary groups. And I think this is something that we're developing very soon. You will be seeing.
Amazing initiative.
You'll be seeing more. And the importance here is because all of a sudden you realize that one technology has solved problems in one area, and it can actually be moved in the other area. And you take, for example, healthcare and fraud, healthcare fraud, fintech, financial fraud, and you bring these together. The other item that is in the plan is bringing together our top researchers and helping them mentor and, let's say, act as coaches to the next generation. Cyprus has a very big list of I think extraordinary researchers. As a nation, we boast more than 30 ERCs, right from some of the top institutions. Which, when you look at the per researcher capita of our population, it is very, very high. So inspiring these people to step up really and showcase to others what it means, right, and how you can unlock things is important. So and then the passion I have is really
startups.
No, it's not just startups. It's startups, but it's also bringing together the research community with industry. So the research community with industry, and this link is very important because you can do research, right? You can do basic research, which is fundamentally important for us. But if you can actually also start looking at the research that can move very, very fast to really change the life or impact lives, right? You start creating a much faster value to the economy. And last but not least, the work that I do on startups is not just because I'm a fan of startups, it's because I understand that the journey for a startup to actually go to the market and build a new market is hard, and it requires a different type of a know-how. But because technology is moving very fast, the companies or the people or the capacity and resources we need for us to be successful as societies are many startups, because they think out of the box how to solve a problem. They think out of the box how to scale faster, and they don't require billions of dollars of R&D. So if we can create an economy or a society where we have a healthy mix between startups, traditional companies, innovation companies, and enterprises, we make an economy run much faster. And when you can do that, yes, I hope that by 2035, we can have a 4-day working week or a 3-day working week, right? But that's 10 years down the road.
There's some dreams.
I think the startup community really needs you. I mean, if you can, what you're doing with the startups is great. There has been a very big lack with new startups coming from Cyprus, and I believe nowadays you guys are addressing this. And of course, everybody wants to see a new Footy, a new Reflect Festival in Cyprus, and we want to see the new generation grow. And without mentorship, it will be very hard for them.
True, but let me give you a number, and I think this is good for our audience to know. According to Startup Blink, since 2024 to 2025, there has been an increase of 71% of startups in Cyprus, and it's not just Cypriot-born startups. It's startups that are coming and entrepreneurs coming from other countries, because they're seeing that the regulations, the policies, and above all, right, the actual operationalization and execution of our government and our ecosystem is actually moving faster. So it's not just come and build, it's come build, and we will build together. We will be your partners. So I think this message is a message that is resounding. We get calls, from people from Singapore, from Silicon Valley. I think we have already 3 companies in less than 2 months since we visited, for example, Silicon Valley with our president.
Maybe you can tell this story, because I'm sure Anton wants to hear the story about the US.
Absolutely.
Who started this idea about Cyprus going to the US? What did you guys do there? Because, I read all of the news for sure, because I'm passionate about Cyprus and about technology, but maybe you can share the story with the audience.
Well, I'll be honest with you, right? So, going to the US for all of us in Cyprus is something that we wanted to do. And it's because the US is the #1 tech hub in the world, right? So in starting to prepare for such a journey, we started looking at, what are the top research companies? What are the top, technology companies? what are the top nations that are there, and obviously US was there. Our president, His Excellency President Nikos Christodoulidis, is very passionate about progress, about future-proofing the companies, right, and the country, and to really understand how technology can really be brought into Cyprus in ways that we can really help the nation advance into our digital journey. So the important part is we have a minister that comes in from the digital, let's say, ecosystem, from the payment side, running the digital government agenda. We work together. I come in from the world of the hyperscalers, working across EMEA and Asia Pacific. So it was a decision by our president saying, "Help me, right, create the change." And he decided. It was paved by his team, and we enabled the vision by really making sure through our partners. And this is something that I want to make sure is that yes, we all have contacts. Yes, we all create that reach out. But there are areas where you can only go together, right? When you go with a team, it's just like an African proverb that says that, the Maasai, when they want to move fast and they want to see, where they want to go, they go alone. But when they want to go hunting for food, they all go together. So the reality here is that all of our groups, driven by, I think the Council of Ministers and the people who were heading it, myself, the minister, Invest Cyprus, and also I think Tech Island, as a community which had those fantastic, let's say, relationships, each one participated to create the maximum impact for the country. But what is more important is not just opening the door, it's making sure that when you open the door, you discuss about that value and what that can generate. And I think that's again where I really need to echo that the team that we have and the way that we work, right, between giving that advice and basically having the president vision and really be able to see and understand how technology is going to change is game changing. So the important thing is coming back to that after implementing an idea which started is executing it. And I'm proud to say that as part of that follow-up, I've been leading a major part of really coordinating and bringing them all together. The part of execution is moving very, very fast. I'm happy to see that the general idea I had about building that sovereign AI capability and the discussion with Tenstoran to really build the future and that those capabilities is moving very fast. And the result is already 3 US-based companies have arrived in Cyprus. We already have seen, right, 2 plus others that are coming in from India immediately after Prime Minister Modi's visit, right, when he had the meeting with our president. So what we're seeing right now is an acceleration. We're seeing agentic AIs, we're seeing infrastructure players, we're seeing silicon-based based companies, right, on AI coming in. We're seeing more coming from the world. And what I like is that they're all asking, how can we change the world using AI together? And it's not just about private, it's about public. How can we help you, right, adopt this technology to create impact?
Amazing. Maybe also then we talked a lot about AI, but
masterclass in AI.
Masterclass in AI, learned a lot also from the public and private perspective. Something that I'm very passionate for 10 plus years is still crypto, So Cyprus is known actually as one of the leading countries in Europe, but also in the world to attract the biggest crypto companies in the world. I think we had the news, Coinbase, the biggest US crypto company, set up an office in Cyprus. Kraken, the second biggest crypto exchange. I think Revolut also has some strong presence in Cyprus. So
FTX in the past as well. I mean,
for that to forget, but FTX was a different story. But how do you see this also as well from the public perspective? We touched upon a little bit that crypto is a technology that's useful, but a bit maybe finding its clear use case in the mainstream public. But still the companies are coming to Cyprus. That's clear.
Well, I think we had a first strategy that started in 2019 on building on the blockchain and eventually evolving it through then. I think the fact that we've actually taken a very proactive step about having the sandboxes helped, right? And I think that paves a way to really standardize, right, and minimize the risk. I think what's happening and what we're still missing to, I think, accelerate it is we at an industry level and at I think an institutional level are missing that level of awareness, even at the degree level of, right, what does it mean to be certified or have a diploma on cryptocurrencies, yes, right? Or, be that type of an engineer. And that can really unlock that fear. I believe that should we be able to do with cryptocurrencies from a technology perspective and from a regulation perspective, what we are doing on AI and what we have done with the other technologies, I think these will come much faster than they are. But going back, I'll say the following is they're a part of the future. They are already making their way into our lives today. And when this adoption is driving basically the market, you also need to start, looking at the policies, designing for the future, and basically looking at it. So from our perspective, right, again, as government, we have not just the regulations of Cyprus, right? We have the regulations of the European Union, and you cannot really, create a ship that will only take one person somewhere, or one person to go into a ship to go somewhere. So you need to create an effective ecosystem to go there. And I think part of my work, right, starting 2026, will be more focused on this area, is to see how can we really future-proof Cyprus, right, and prepare Cyprus for a much more attractive, let's say, posture on these technologies.
Mm-hmm. Understand. Wanted to mention a big early innovative approach in Cyprus, actually by University of Nicosia. Yeah. If you recall, they offered one of the first certificates for blockchain, let's say blockchain technology.
It was the first master.
It was and later on first master's program, actually. It was an amazing initiative actually by Cyprus, and still a crazy well known in the world. Actually, so many of my colleagues back then I was in Switzerland were studying actually masters in Nicosia. Actually, amazing achievement.
It is, and actually that's where I would like to see more of my colleagues in Cyprus and the university is step up. Create that awareness, develop these, let's say, courses, work with your peers to develop, these technologies into emerging, let's say, courses. I've seen, people all around the world. It's not just in Switzerland, right? I've met more than 100 people here in Dubai that have taken the masters of, the University of Nicosia. You go to Singapore, it's the same. You go to Africa, it's the same. You go to many other areas and you see, and actually everybody's telling us that specific, let's say, course is actually top notch. But what I'm saying is that we need, and it's our duty, right, to really provide more of these, let's say, degrees, because they actually pave the way. And remember, you cannot move technology from one day to another. You cannot move science from one day to another. So to give you an example, the first person that actually advocated or started thinking about the technology that eventually became a programming language that had some sort of, let's say, I would call it functional programming, closer to what we see in AI, is a lady that was born in 1812. Her name was Ada Lovelace. It took us 130 years later to 1950s for the society to start, using this technology. So we don't need for 100 more years to get cryptocurrency master degrees, right? Yes. We need to start thinking, and we need to start thinking because the more you create that awareness and that readiness, the faster adoption will come, the faster the policies will actually be kicked off, and all of that creates a cycle.
Yes. I think we always finish about asking about these conferences.
Oh yes, where can people see you, find you? What are you attending? Yeah, I know you were busy very much yesterday as well, yes, right, at the event. So how does your busy agenda look like in the rest of the year during the summer? Where can people meet you? Where can people find you if they are at the same event? How does that look like? Yeah.
Well, if you are at the same event and you really want to talk about technology and the latest technologies, be it cryptos, blockchains, AIs, right? The best thing to do is just jump in front of me and say, "Hey, Demetris, I want to talk about this very simple idea." I do actually, I'm going to be going to too many, let's say, industry visits. I've done in 19 months now, I've done more than 1,100 visits to the industry.
Wow.
So now that I have a good idea about, what's happening out there, I'm going to spending more on the time on the design policy and working on the strategy. So my first commitment is to get the AI strategy done by November, when we want to ratify that at the Council of Ministers. The next strategy that I'll be looking at is the blockchain and also the emerging technologies, which is IoT and all of these other things that we need to look at, particularly because these are going to really create the game changing in the supply chain industry, in the maritime industry. I'm very particular on the AI ethics area right now and the autonomous. So these two diverging areas from a technology perspective are of interest. So I'll be attending, the AI workshops and conferences in London on ethics, in Dubai, GITEX. I'm going to be back here very soon. We're going to be in India on a very interesting mission in September. And then, we have here one that we're not going to miss, one where we're going to have some surprises for you. So for those of you who haven't heard about the doers, who haven't heard, about what the doers are doing with Silicon Oasis, I think here in the UAE, I would encourage you all to start putting it on your list and to really start thinking about attending. And from a podcast perspective, I would be happy to join you right in the near future on AI ethics, or, I think autonomous devices or autonomous technologies, right? Be it cars, be it robots, be it humanoids, and where the future is taking us. So thank you for that.
Amazing. It was really a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure.
I think I also have to say this episode was very unique in a sense, how much of a inside knowledge we got about AI and how does the public sector and the private sector see it. For me, it was amazing, and I learned a lot today. Really to say, I learned a lot.
And I will just leave the audience with a question, with a comment. My father actually, for the first time in his life, using our digital governance website, the site, the gov.cy, was able to actually fulfill an obligation he had for agricultural, let's say, declarations in 3 minutes. Yes. Imagine that this person at 75 years old, as a pensioner, needed to take his car to go to the actual department, to wait in line and to come back, right?
Yeah.
And he was able to do it in 3 minutes. I think, technology is a journey. Digital transformation is a journey. You don't get it right from one day to another. We're in the process of really starting to rethink the way we do it by, thinking about customer journeys and digital journeys, etc. Feel free to give us feedback, right? I encourage you to use what's being built. Constructive criticism is always very welcome, right? And I think that we are here as a team, citizen, government, right, industry, to learn and accelerate together. And our commitment is that, we'll do what we can do to catch up. And thank you for your trust.
Thank you for everything, Demetris, and thank you for being here today with us.
Yeah,
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And I hope you enjoy the show. Subscribe to the channel, watch everything that we have, like the episodes, give us feedbacks, write in the comments what you thought about this, and see you soon with the next episode.